The fog hung thick over the Japanese mountains that morning, rolling down from the snowy peaks like ghostly rivers. Deep in the quiet valley beneath Mount Sato, the old villagers gathered around the shrine fire as they did every year. They spoke in low voices about the ancient story their ancestors had passed down, a story of something sleeping under the mountain. They called it Ryujin, the dragon king of the deep. They said his breath once created the storms that shaped the islands, and his anger once drowned armies in boiling seas. Tourists who visited laughed when they heard it, calling it superstition, an old myth to entertain travelers. But the villagers didn't laugh. They never did. To them, Ryujin wasn't a legend. He was a warning. They left offerings of rice and salt at the mountain's base, whispering to the fog that drifted like a living spirit between the trees. That morning, the ground beneath their feet trembled. It was a soft rumble at first, like thunder far away. But as the hours passed, the shaking returned, stronger, deeper. A few wooden houses cracked as old beams shifted. The villagers looked to the mountain, and the elder, a woman almost 90, pressed her hand to the ground and whispered, "He's moving again." In Tokyo, 200 miles away, scientists at the Japan Geothermal Research Agency noticed something strange on their instruments. One of their heat sensors, placed years ago deep within Mount Sato, began to record temperature spikes far beyond natural geothermal activity. The readings kept climbing, first a few degrees, then hundreds. At first, the team thought it was a sensor malfunction. But then the data feed started to pulse rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Dr. Kenji Arai, the lead researcher, frowned as he watched the live feed. "No geological system does that," he murmured. The team decided to send a drone into the tunnels beneath the mountain, an unmanned explorer equipped with infrared cameras and radiation sensors. The drone descended into darkness, its lights bouncing off damp rock walls, its small engines humming as it went deeper. The tunnel's air pressure dropped suddenly. The drone's sensors began to go wild. On the main monitor, the research team watched as the temperature jumped again. The thermal camera showed something massive in the darkness, buried under layers of stone. A heat signature so large that it filled the screen. It wasn't static like a magma pocket. It moved, slowly, breathing in and out. The scientists froze. Dr. Arai leaned forward, whispering, "What in God's name is that?" Then the drone camera flickered. For a brief second, the feed showed something smooth and golden beneath the rock, something that reflected light like metal. The movement stopped. The team thought the drone had crashed. But then the entire screen filled with one thing. A golden eye, round as a boulder, staring straight into the camera. It blinked once and the feed went black. Panic spread in the control room. Technicians tried to reboot the signal, but the connection was dead. The backup drone refused to respond. Radiation levels from the site began to rise slightly, and seismic waves started to ripple through the nearby valley. Within an hour, government officials arrived at the research center. They took the data, the video, and every backup copy. The team was told to stay silent under the National Security Act. Dr. Arai tried to protest, but an official in a black suit told him coldly, "For now, this is a geological matter. You saw nothing unusual." By nightfall, strange lights appeared over the mountain, circles of glowing blue that moved like slow lightning through the clouds. Locals recorded the sight with their phones, and soon, short clips began to spread online. At first, people thought it was a hoax or a weather experiment. But the lights kept returning brighter each night. Then came the roaring sounds. Deep, rolling, powerful. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. The sound carried for miles, shaking windows even in distant towns. Old people in nearby villages began to flee. They said the air tasted like metal. In Washington, D.C., a satellite operator at the U.S. Defense Monitoring Center noticed something strange. One of their orbital sensors detected an unusual energy burst from Japan. It wasn't nuclear, but it was strong enough to trigger the system's emergency alert. The frequency was unfamiliar, and the radiation pattern was rhythmic, almost alive. The data was sent to NASA for analysis. Within hours, they confirmed it wasn't from human technology. The heat signature from the mountain was now large enough to be visible from space, glowing faintly like a wound in the earth. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Japanese government quietly evacuated the small towns near Mount Sato, saying it was due to potential volcanic instability. Journalists who tried to get near the mountain were turned away by soldiers. But even they could hear it, the low rumble beneath the ground that sounded almost like breathing. The villagers who refused to leave gathered in the temple and prayed. One old man whispered to the others, "He's angry. We disturbed his sleep." That night, an emergency meeting was held in Tokyo. Satellite images showed fractures spreading outward from the mountain's center. Something huge was pushing upward. The Prime Minister stared at the data, trying to make sense of it, when the lights in the room flickered. The ground trembled again, but this time it didn't stop. The shaking built up, rattling glass, shaking buildings. Alarms began to sound across the capital. Scientists in the Geological Agency watched in horror as the mountain's internal pressure readings shot off the charts. And then, at 2:13 a.m., the top of Mount Sato exploded in a fountain of fire and rock. From hundreds of miles away, cameras captured the moment. A massive beam of red light burst from the crater, spiraling into the clouds. The ground quaked as shock waves rippled across the sea. Fishermen near the coast saw waves rising higher than any storm they'd ever witnessed. When the smoke cleared, witnesses on the coast reported seeing a shape moving through the clouds. Something enormous, with wings that shimmered like molten gold. For a few seconds, the entire sky glowed red. Back in the Tokyo Research Lab, Dr. Arai watched the live feed in disbelief. He whispered, "It's Awake." The screens behind him flashed warnings. Radiation spikes, energy waves, unknown frequency patterns. The world was changing, and no one knew what was coming next. Far above the clouds, the golden shadow moved silently east, wings cutting through the mist like blades. Its roar rolled across the land like thunder, echoing in valleys and cities alike. The legend was no longer a story told by old voices. It was real and it was angry. Humanity had just witnessed the first sign of something ancient returning to life, and deep beneath the earth something else, something even older, stirred in answer. The air over Japan felt strange the next morning, thicker, heavier, charged with a kind of silent tension no one could explain. The people of Niigata Prefecture woke to a red sunrise that painted the sky like blood. From the coast, fishermen could see smoke rising from Mount Sato across the water, and every few minutes, they heard deep booming sounds coming from under the sea. The news called it a volcanic event. But the people who lived closest to the mountain knew better. Animals had vanished overnight. Birds didn't sing. The ground itself felt alive. In Tokyo, scientists were still analyzing what happened the night before. The data made no sense. The eruption didn't release magma, it released energy. The instruments recorded a pulse, like a massive electrical heartbeat, that traveled through the Earth's crust and circled the planet in seconds. Every monitoring station from China to Alaska felt it. Dr. Arai sat alone in the control room, watching the readings replay again and again. It was like something below the mountain had sent out a message, a wave that wasn't random. It had rhythm. It had purpose. He whispered to himself, "It's not a volcano. It's alive." At the same time, the Japanese self-defense forces deployed drones to survey the area. The first drone's live feed showed black ash, broken rocks, and fire still burning in the crater. Then the drone's camera caught something impossible. A huge scale, metallic, glowing faintly under the sunlight, slid between the rocks. Then another. The mountain wasn't just destroyed. It had opened like a cracked shell. The ground began to tremble again, stronger this time. The soldiers on the ground shouted as the temperature around them spiked. Their cameras blurred from the heat shimmer. Then, from the heart of the crater, something moved. A golden claw, big as a skyscraper, tore through the rock and reached toward the sky. Then came the sound. A roar so deep it shattered windows miles away. The drone feed turned white from energy overload, and then it cut to black. Within an hour, Tokyo went into full emergency mode. Fighter jets took off from coastal bases, streaking toward Mount Sato. Evacuation orders spread through nearby cities. But there was no time. The creature had already begun to move. Witnesses on the coast saw it rise. Massive wings unfurling, their edges glowing red like molten metal. Its scales shimmered between gold and black, reflecting sunlight like mirrors. It looked alive and mechanical at the same time, as if something ancient had fused with technology humans could never build. As it rose into the air, the clouds twisted around it, forming a spiral storm that grew wider by the minute. The dragon turned its head toward the sea, its eyes burning like suns. The Prime Minister watched the live feed in silence, surrounded by his security team. "Can we stop it?" he asked. No one answered. Across the ocean, in the Pentagon, American analysts confirmed the dragon's energy signature was stronger than a nuclear detonation but perfectly controlled, as if the creature could regulate its own power. The world had no defense plan for something like this. The United Nations called an emergency session, but even as they spoke, new footage arrived from Japan. Videos taken by terrified civilians. The dragon's wings blotted out the sun as it flew over coastal towns, the shockwave from its movement flattening buildings. It didn't attack immediately. It was just moving, scanning, roaring, as if searching for something. But when a squadron of Japanese fighter jets approached and fired warning shots, the creature turned its head slowly, and what happened next silenced the world. The dragon opened its mouth, and the air around it ignited. A blast of white-blue fire erupted, cutting through the sky like a lightning storm. The jets vanished instantly, their metal melting midair. The fire struck the ground below, vaporizing everything in seconds. People miles away fell to the ground from the shockwave, their skin burned by the heat. Cameras captured the scene for only a moment before the light overwhelmed the sensors. It wasn't fire from any element known to man. It was plasma, raw and alive, hotter than the surface of the sun. When the flames died, there was nothing left but glass and silence. The world watched in horror as Japan's northern coast burned. Social media exploded with footage and theories. Some said it was an alien weapon, others believed it was divine punishment. But Dr. Arai, sitting in the Tokyo bunker, stared at the recovered drone data. Inside the energy readings there was a pattern like code. Something intelligent was buried in the pulses, repeating over and over. It wasn't random destruction. The dragon was trying to communicate. He sent the data to the Japanese government with a single message attached. It's not here to destroy, it's here to warn. But no one listened. By evening, US and Japanese forces coordinated a massive response. Aegis destroyers moved into the Sea of Japan, loaded with railgun projectiles and plasma-resistant shielding. American bombers circled offshore, waiting for the order. The creature, now hovering above Tokyo Bay, seemed to sense them. It looked down at the city below, millions of people watching, praying, crying. And then it roared again, not in rage but in something that sounded almost like pain. The sound made the glass towers vibrate and cracked the pavement. Power across the city flickered and died. The dragon's wings folded slightly, and its golden glow began to dim. For a moment it almost looked weak. General Marcus Hale, watching the feed from the carrier USS Sentinel, clenched his jaw. "If it's dying, we finish it now," he said. But the Japanese commander hesitated. "We don't even know what it is," he replied. Hale answered coldly, "Whatever it is, it's killing people." He gave the order. Missiles launched from ships and aircraft at once, hundreds of them streaking through the sky toward the massive creature over Tokyo Bay. The city lit up as the explosions surrounded it, flames rising hundreds of meters high. The shockwave rippled through the water. For several seconds, everyone believed it was over. But then the fire parted, and the dragon emerged, angrier, brighter, alive. It roared again, louder than before, and the sea beneath it boiled. In that moment, humanity realized it wasn't fighting a beast. It was facing something older than civilization itself, something that had waited beneath the earth for centuries, maybe watching, maybe judging. And now it was awake. The dragon turned toward the Pacific, its wings glowing white. In the command center, Dr. Arai whispered to the trembling scientists around him. "We didn't wake it. We disturbed it." Outside, lightning struck again and again, even though the sky was clear. Somewhere beneath the waves, the ground began to pulse with the same strange rhythm as before, like a heartbeat answering from deep below the sea. The world was holding its breath. All over Japan, the sky was tinted orange from fires burning along the coast, and thick black smoke rolled through cities like slow-moving storms. People fled from the Bay Area, crowding the roads and trains as sirens howled non-stop. News drones hovered above Tokyo, broadcasting live images of the massive dragon floating in the clouds. Its wings stretched across the horizon like golden storms. No one could take their eyes off it. The creature didn't seem to tire. It moved with impossible grace, glowing brighter each time missiles hit it. In underground shelters, people whispered prayers or sat in silence. And far above them, in orbit, a satellite feed displayed something even more terrifying. The dragon's energy pulse was growing stronger, not weaker. Its power output was now beyond anything humans had ever measured. It wasn't burning fuel or reacting chemically. It was feeding on the energy directed against it. Every missile, every laser strike made it stronger. General Marcus Hale stood inside the command center aboard the USS Sentinel, staring at the main holographic map. His jaw was tight, his eyes tired. He'd fought alien wars, led planetary defenses, and watched soldiers die in silence. But this was different. "It's learning," he muttered. His second-in-command, Captain Ruiz, nodded grimly. "Sir, the creature absorbs every attack. It's converting our energy into power." Hale turned toward the communications console. "Get me the Prime Minister," he ordered. A moment later, the leader of Japan appeared on screen, his face pale and strained. Hale's voice was steady but cold. "We can't win this by shooting at it. We need to know what it is. Otherwise, we'll just keep feeding it." The Prime Minister hesitated. "Our scientists are analyzing the energy signature. There may be patterns." Hale leaned forward. "Patterns?" The Japanese leader lowered his voice. "Dr. Kenji Arai believes it's not here to kill. He says it's trying to send a message." Hale exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Then let's hope we can figure out what it's saying before it levels the rest of Tokyo." Outside, the ship trembled slightly as another shockwave rolled across the sea. On the horizon, the dragon moved again, wings slicing through clouds as it drifted south, toward the open Pacific. The storm followed it, twisting into a massive cyclone that spanned hundreds of miles. Lightning flared through the clouds, forming strange geometric shapes, rings and spirals that looked too deliberate to be natural. On the ground, seismographs went wild. Across Japan, the land began to vibrate with a deep hum that wasn't caused by machinery. It was like the Earth itself was responding. In Tokyo's underground research base, Dr. Arai worked frantically. His face was pale, his fingers shaking as he replayed the coded pulses they had captured from the dragon's energy waves. He ran the data through translation algorithms, trying to convert them into sound frequencies. When the speakers finally emitted the decoded signal, the room filled with a strange rhythmic hum, deep and layered, like voices overlapping each other in slow motion. One of the researchers looked frightened. "It sounds like speech." Arai nodded. "Yes, but not human." He turned to the others. "It's not warning us to stay away. It's warning something else." The team fell silent. "What do you mean?" a technician asked. Arai zoomed in on the waveform. "These aren't just pulses. It's broadcasting. It's calling." Before he could explain more, the ground shook violently again. The lights flickered and then went dark. Emergency lights flashed red. Arai grabbed the radio. "Control, this is Dr. Arai. Do you read me?" Static answered. He climbed the stairs to the surface with a small group of soldiers. When they reached the top, the sight waiting for them froze their blood. The dragon was now high above the ocean, glowing like a small sun. But below it, the sea was churning, massive whirlpools opening like hungry mouths. And from within the depths, something else was rising. The American fleet opened fire again, railgun slugs cutting through the air at hypersonic speed. The impacts sent shockwaves across the ocean, but the dragon didn't flinch. It seemed focused on the sea, staring into the depths below. Then, to everyone's horror, it opened its wings wide and unleashed another blast. Not at the ships or cities, but straight down into the water. The explosion was blinding, a pillar of white light piercing the ocean. When the light faded, the whirlpools vanished, and the sea went eerily calm. The dragon hovered there for a moment, almost motionless, then slowly turned toward the human ships. Its eyes glowed like twin suns, and for the first time, the creature spoke. No one could understand the language, but the sound vibrated through metal, glass, and bone. Every human on the ships felt it deep inside, like a command pressing against their minds. Some soldiers screamed, covering their ears. Others dropped to their knees. The translators scrambled to decode the low-frequency speech, and after several agonizing seconds, the words formed on the display. "Leave the depths, or they will rise." Hale stared at the translation, his hands tightening into fists. "They? What's down there?" he whispered. But before anyone could answer, the dragon shot upward into the clouds, vanishing in a flash of light. The shockwave that followed hit the fleet like a hammer, sending ships rocking in the waves. In the silence that followed, the world tried to make sense of what had happened. The news called the dragon a divine warning, a god's punishment for mankind's arrogance. Others called it an alien weapon left from a forgotten civilization. But in the secret halls of Project Aegis, the truth began to take shape. Satellite scans of the Pacific showed enormous structures deep under the ocean floor, geometric shapes the size of mountains, arranged in perfect lines. They were waking up one by one. Hale stared at the 3D hologram, his voice barely above a whisper. "We thought it was just one creature. We were wrong. It's guarding something." That night, across Japan, the skies flashed again. Not from the dragon, but from something else emerging from the ocean depths. Blue lights rippled across the water, spreading out toward the coasts. Humanity had only begun to understand what the dragon's warning meant. And now, something even more powerful was answering from below. The Pacific night was broken by flashes of blue light that shimmered beneath the ocean's surface, spreading outward in growing rings. Ships from the United Nations combined fleet floated in uneasy silence, their decks vibrating from distant tremors. General Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the USS Sentinel, staring at the radar screen as new signals began to appear, dozens of them, each rising from the deep. "Those aren't submarines," Captain Ruiz said quietly. Hale didn't respond. The signals were too large, too uniform. Whatever was down there was not built by humans. A moment later, the ocean erupted. Enormous metallic shapes pierced through the waves, taller than skyscrapers. They weren't ships. They were towers, glowing with the same golden light that once radiated from the dragon. The sea hissed as they rose higher, forming a vast circle. Inside that circle, the water boiled and churned like something alive beneath it was trying to break free. Across Japan's coastline, civilians pointed their phones toward the ocean, capturing footage that would soon flood every screen on Earth. The dragon had vanished hours ago, but the air still buzzed with the strange energy it left behind. Power grids flickered on and off. Compasses spun uselessly. Even satellites in orbit reported interference. Governments ordered full-scale evacuations from coastal cities. But millions stayed to watch, their fear mixed with fascination. Something ancient was happening before their eyes, something humanity had no control over. In Tokyo's underground command center, Dr. Kenji Arai and his exhausted team worked around the clock. The coded pulses from the dragon had changed. They were now shorter, sharper, repeating a single pattern. He stared at the waveform, then realized what it was. "Its coordinates," he whispered. The numbers pointed straight to the center of the newly formed ring of towers in the ocean. "It's telling us where to look." A soldier beside him frowned. "Look for what?" Before Arai could answer, the lights flickered again, and the speakers began to hum with the same low sound that came before the dragon first awoke. The building shook. Arai looked up, his eyes wide. Something's coming through. Out at sea, the fleet's spotlights swept across the dark water. The ring of towers began to pulse with golden light, synchronized like a heartbeat. The ocean between them started to glow, bright enough to turn night into day. The heat was unbearable. Waves slammed against the destroyers. The sound of cracking metal filled the air as some ships lost power. Then, from the glowing water, something vast began to emerge. It wasn't another dragon. It was a machine, black and smooth, its surface covered in alien markings that glowed blue and gold. It was circular, spinning slowly as it rose from the depths. Hale's voice trembled as he whispered, "It's a gate." All over the world, scientists confirmed the same readings: gravitational distortions, energy fields bending reality itself. The object was not from Earth, but it had been buried here long before humans evolved. The towers were part of it, acting like anchors to hold the gate closed. The dragon hadn't been a destroyer. It had been a guardian. And now that it was gone, the lock was breaking. Hale slammed his fist on the console. "Get me all available aircraft. I want every missile, every railgun on standby. We stop whatever's coming through that thing." But before the command could be relayed, the sea exploded. A beam of light shot straight into the sky, punching through the clouds. The shockwave sent ships tumbling like toys. Inside the Tokyo Command Center, Dr. Arai watched the data spike off the charts. "We're losing containment," someone shouted. Arai's eyes filled with dread as he saw the readings. The energy wasn't escaping, it was forming. "It's opening a passage," he whispered. "Something is coming here." The room went silent as the comms crackled with Hale's voice. "Doctor, whatever that thing is, it's active. Can we shut it down?" Arai hesitated. "No. Not unless the Guardian returns." As if hearing the words, a deafening roar split the sky. Cameras turned upward as clouds burst apart and fire streaked across the heavens. The dragon had returned. It descended through the storm like a falling star, its golden scales blazing. Every ship in the fleet turned its sensors toward it. The creature dove straight into the glowing gate, slamming against the rising machine with a shockwave that shook the planet. The towers began to crack, golden energy spilling out like blood. Hale stared in awe. "It's fighting to close it." The battle that followed was beyond human comprehension. The sea turned into chaos. Fire, water, lightning, and metal clashing in a storm of pure power. The dragon tore through the alien structure, its roars echoing like thunder across the world. Every strike it landed caused new quakes across the Pacific. Inside the Tokyo command room, Dr. Arai shouted over the noise, "The gate's destabilizing. If it collapses, it'll create a gravitational implosion." Hale's voice came through the comms again. "What happens if it doesn't?" Arai's face turned pale. "Then whatever's on the other side will come through." The ocean burned. The alien machine released waves of blue energy that wrapped around the dragon, trying to pull it down. But the creature fought on, its wings glowing brighter than ever. For the first time, it let out a scream of pain, raw and terrible. The sound carried all the way to the Japanese coast, making people cry without knowing why. Then, through the light and chaos, the dragon's chest began to glow white-hot. Dr. Arai watched the readings in disbelief. "It's overloading itself. It's sacrificing its core." Above the raging sea, the dragon folded its wings and plunged straight into the center of the gate. The light exploded outward, so bright it erased the horizon. The blast wave tore through the clouds, scattering them across the entire Pacific. When the light finally faded, the gate and the towers were gone. The ocean was calm again, silent, endless. The fleet drifted aimlessly, their systems fried, their crews speechless. Hale stood on the deck, watching the sunrise. "It gave everything," he said quietly. Captain Ruiz nodded beside him. "Then what happens now?" Hale looked at the still water and replied, "Now we find out what it died to keep out." Deep beneath the ocean floor, far below where sunlight had ever reached, a faint blue light began to flicker once more. The gate was gone, but something had slipped through before it closed. The world was not celebrating victory. It was holding its breath in fear. In the days after the great explosion that erased the ocean towers, people across Japan watched the coastline in silence, expecting something else to rise. The sea had gone unnaturally calm, as if the water itself was afraid to move. Ships from the United Nations fleet lay crippled across the Pacific, their hulls scorched, their systems burned by the energy blast. General Marcus Hale stood on the damaged bridge of the USS Sentinel, looking out over the endless gray waves. His face was streaked with ash, his uniform torn. "We lost contact with half the fleet," Captain Ruiz said quietly beside him. "Tokyo reports electromagnetic storms all over the Pacific. Communications are dying again." Hale nodded slowly. "It's not over. You feel that?" Ruiz frowned. "Feel what, sir?" Hale stared out into the fog. The ocean's still humming. Deep below the surface, something was alive. The explosion that destroyed the towers hadn't ended the disturbance. It had only opened something new. Japanese sonar buoys detected faint vibrations moving in a slow rhythm, like a pulse. The signal repeated every 10 seconds. When analysts overlaid the data with the earlier recordings from the Dragon, they realized it was the same frequency, the same heartbeat. Dr. Kenji Arai, still in the Tokyo Command Center, stared at the waveform on his screen. "It survived," he whispered. "The Guardian's still alive." But his assistant pointed at the new data, his voice shaking. "No, doctor. That's not the same source. It's coming from deeper, far deeper." Within hours, satellites detected movement across the Pacific floor. Vast sections of seabed were shifting, as if a continent-sized creature were stirring beneath the crust. Reports flooded in from coastal regions. Strange lights in the sky, magnetic fields warping compasses, and massive schools of fish leaping from the water before dying on the beaches. People across Japan began to hear it too. A faint, distant sound like thunder rolling under the ocean. It grew louder each night, until windows rattled from vibrations no one could trace. The press began calling it the Second Awakening. In Washington, military officials demanded answers. Hale was called to a live conference, his face still lit by the red glow of emergency lights on the Sentinel. "General," a UN representative said sharply, "you claimed the threat was neutralized. What exactly are we detecting now?" Hale leaned forward toward the screen, his eyes hollow. "We didn't stop anything. We just delayed it. Whatever that dragon was fighting, it's still down there." The room went silent. Hale continued, "If the dragon was a guardian, it was protecting us. Now it's gone. We might have just opened the door to whatever it was keeping locked away." Back in Japan, Dr. Arai's team intercepted another signal from the deep. It was not rhythmic this time. It was language. The computer translated fragments, broken words that chilled everyone in the room. "Gate breached, arrival, correction." Arai's heart sank. "It's not a natural phenomenon," he said softly. "It's them. Whoever built that machine, whoever sent that dragon, they're coming." The lights flickered, and a low rumble rolled through the floor. The sensors on the nearest island spiked again. Something was moving toward the surface, slowly, deliberately. At dawn, the first sighting came from a fishing village near Niigata. Survivors from the earlier evacuation saw the water bulge upward like a giant dome. A moment later, an enormous black structure broke the surface, rising hundreds of meters high. It was smooth, seamless, and perfectly round, like a metal heart half buried in the sea. Around it, smaller spires rose, glowing faintly blue. The villagers ran. The military scrambled drones, but every electronic system failed within a mile of the object. The air around it shimmered, distorting light as if reality itself was bending. And then, out of the mist, came a sound no one expected. A roar, weak and distant but unmistakable. The dragon. General Hale watched the footage with disbelief. "It's alive," he whispered. The creature appeared over the horizon, its body dim and damaged, one wing torn and half its scales blackened. But it was still moving, still breathing. It circled the new structure once, then hovered above it. For a long moment the world stood still. Then the dragon unleashed a cry so powerful it was heard across continents. The new structure responded by glowing brighter, pulsing with blue light. Dr. Arai, watching the live feed, suddenly understood. "It's not fighting it this time," he said. "It's warning it." Seconds later, the entire ocean around the structure exploded into motion. Giant waves rose, slamming into the Japanese coast. The structure cracked open, revealing a blinding white interior. From within came shapes, tall, humanoid forms made of light and metal, each several stories high. They weren't machines or living beings. They were both. Hale's voice came over the comms, hard and steady. "All forces, hold your fire." The world watched in silence as the beings floated upward, surrounding the dragon. For a moment, everything stopped. Wind, waves, even sound. Then the dragon bowed its head. It was impossible to tell what was happening. Light surrounded them, bright and warm. The sky above Japan filled with energy streams that looked like auroras. People who saw it said they felt something deep inside. A strange peace mixed with terror. Dr. Arai watched as one of the light beings reached out, placing its hand on the dragon's head. The creature shuddered, then slowly dissolved into golden mist that drifted upward into the sky. The light beings turned toward the horizon, where the sun was rising, and in a single burst of light, they vanished. The world was silent again. The ocean stilled. The skies cleared. Hale stood on the deck, his hand pressed to the railing. "Did we win?" Ruiz asked softly. Hale didn't answer right away. "I don't think this was a war," he said at last. "It was a test." In Tokyo, Dr. Arai sat before the final signal recording. The last message from the dragon played once more, now clearer than before. It was a human voice, calm, distant, and ancient. "The Guardians return when balance fails. You were not meant to wake us." Arai stared at the waveform, unable to move. Outside his window, the first quiet waves rolled against the shore. The legend of the mountains was no longer a myth. Humanity had survived the warning, but in the silence that followed, no one dared to ask what the warning truly meant. For weeks after the great light vanished, the skies over Japan remained strangely quiet. No birds, no distant planes, only the faint hiss of wind brushing through broken buildings near the coast. The ocean that had boiled and screamed days before was now perfectly still, reflecting the gray clouds above like a mirror. People walked along the beaches in silence, searching for answers, or at least signs that the nightmare had truly ended. There were none. The dragon was gone. The metal structure had sunk back into the deep, and the world's sensors recorded nothing unusual. No energy surges, no magnetic interference, no tremors. For the first time in months, everything was calm. Too calm. General Marcus Hale sat alone in the dark briefing room aboard the USS Sentinel, his face lit only by the holographic screen before him. Lines of data scrolled slowly, showing that all satellite readings had flatlined. Yet Hale couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. "Sir," Captain Ruiz said, entering quietly, "Tokyo's scientists say the seabed has stabilized. They think whatever that thing was, it's gone for good." Hale didn't look up. "We thought the same about the dragon," he said. Ruiz hesitated, then lowered his voice. "The men want to go home, sir. The world's tired. Maybe it's time." Hale sighed, staring out the window toward the dark sea. "The world doesn't get to rest yet, Captain. Not until we know what that was." Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Dr. Kenji Arai and his exhausted team were still poring over the last fragments of data. They had replayed the final transmission from the dragon hundreds of times, but it still made no sense. Arai rubbed his temples, whispering the words, "The Guardians return when balance fails. You were not meant to wake us." What balance? What did they mean by us? His assistant, Hannah, leaned over his shoulder, pointing at the waveform. "Sir, look here. This isn't a human voice pattern. It's layered, synthetic, almost like it was encoded by a machine." Arai zoomed in. Beneath the main voice was a faint repeating signal, one that hadn't been noticed before. His eyes widened. "It's still transmitting." The signal wasn't powerful. It was barely a whisper, buried under static. But when the computer traced it, the direction shocked everyone in the room. It wasn't coming from under the Pacific. It was coming from orbit. Arai felt his stomach twist. "Something's up there," he said. "Something's been listening." Within hours, satellites around Earth detected a faint object moving high above the planet. Too slow to be a meteor and too large to be debris. When Japan's orbital telescope zoomed in, the image froze the entire control center. Floating far beyond the atmosphere was a massive ring-shaped structure, dark and silent, like an open wound in the sky. It had not been there before. The discovery spread quickly, though governments tried to suppress the news. The world had barely recovered from the dragon's devastation, and now they faced another impossible truth. Hale was briefed aboard his ship. He stared at the images, his jaw tightening. "That's no satellite," he said. "That's a door." Ruiz frowned. "A door to what?" Hale looked out toward the stars. "Whatever built the Guardians." The Sentinel was ordered to remain in the Pacific, serving as the command hub for the new task force, Operation Skywatch. But Hale already knew this was beyond military control. "We can't shoot what we don't understand," he said quietly. "We'll only make it worse." Weeks passed. The ring remained motionless, silent. Scientists speculated it might be dormant, a relic of whatever civilization had sent the dragon. Yet Arai's signal data showed something else. Every 24 hours, precisely at midnight Japan time, the ring pulsed once with faint blue light, almost like a heartbeat. Each pulse corresponded with another small tremor beneath Mount Sato, where it had all begun. The link was undeniable. "It's connected," Arai whispered. The dragon was part of something bigger, something that still sees this world as unfinished. He looked out the window toward the mountains, their snowy peaks hidden in mist. Maybe they weren't protecting us. Maybe they were building something, and we interrupted it. Then one night the pulse didn't fade. Instead, it grew brighter, burning through the cloud layers until even people on the ground could see it. The ring ignited with light, lines of symbols forming around its edge. Panic spread across the planet. The world's militaries powered up defenses, cities blacked out, and every nation held its breath. Hale stood on the bridge, gripping the railing. "If that thing opens," he said, "we're out of time." Moments later, the ring flashed once, so bright it turned night into day. But nothing came through. Instead, beams of light shot downward, striking 6 points across Earth's surface: Tokyo, Cairo, New York, London, Rio de Janeiro, and Johannesburg. For exactly 60 seconds, the beams remained silent and steady. Then they vanished. Power grids across the world flickered, satellites went blind, and then silence again. But humanity had changed forever, because at each impact site something new now existed. Giant circular imprints burned into the ground, glowing faintly with alien symbols. In Tokyo, Arai stood beside one of the marks, watching it pulse under his boots. "It's a network," he said. "They're preparing for something. Maybe another awakening." Hale's voice came over the communicator, tired but firm. "Then we need to decide fast, Doctor. Do we destroy them, or do we wait to see who steps through?" The scientist looked up at the gray sky, feeling the wind shift. "We already destroyed one Guardian," he said softly. "And look what followed. Maybe this time we listen." The camera of the story would pull upward, showing Earth from space. Tiny, glowing, fragile. Above it, the ring turned slowly, a single line of light crossing its edge like an opening eye. Then a deep, distant sound filled the void. Not a roar, not thunder, but something older, something watching. The screen would fade to black as the words appeared. The Guardians were never gods. They were warnings. And below that, the faint echo of a human voice whispering from the dark. "Balance restored. For now."